Only bespecial people. Eleanor Thompson was 71 years old the day she finally understood the difference between being needed and being loved. She had raised her only child, Marcus, alone after her husband Richard died of a heart attack in the hardware store parking lot when Marcus was 12. For 23 years, she had worked double shifts as a hospital phlebotomist, saved every overtime penny, and still found time to be at every soccer game, every parent-teacher night, every heartbreak. When Marcus met Brooke at 28, Eleanor opened her arms and her wallet without hesitation. She wanted them to have the life she and Richard never quite managed. For 3 years, she paid their mortgage on the pretty little craftsman house in Maple Ridge, $1,850 a month, because interest rates are murder right now, Mom. She paid the utilities when the furnace broke, and they couldn't possibly swing both. She paid for Brooke's laser hair removal, Marcus's dental implants, the $6,000 destination wedding deposit they swore they'd pay back once Marcus made partner. She paid and paid and paid until her own savings account looked like a war zone and her retirement fund had shrunk to the size of a polite cough. She never asked for thanks. A hug from Marcus and one of Brooke's bright, "You're the best, Mom" texts was enough. Until the wedding. It was a Thursday in early May when the phone rang. Eleanor was ironing the pale lavender mother of the groom dress she had bought 6 months earlier, humming along to Frank Sinatra, picturing herself in the photograph she had already imagined 1,000 times. "Mom," Marcus said, voice strangely flat, "we did it. We got married yesterday." Eleanor's iron froze mid-air. "Yesterday? But the venue's booked for June 15th. "We changed our minds," Brooke cut in cheerfully on speaker. "We decided to keep it intimate, just the people who really matter. You understand, don't you?" The lavender dress suddenly felt radioactive in her hands. Who was there?" Eleanor managed. "Oh, you know," Brooke laughed, light and crystalline. "My parents, my brothers, Auntie Jen, the girls from work. Marcus's best man, Drew. Only the special people." Special people. Eleanor stood in her small laundry room, clutching the phone, feeling every dollar she had ever sent them turn to ice water in her veins. She had paid for the white silk gown Brooke was wearing in the photos she would see an hour later. She had paid for the flowers, the photographer, the string quartet that Brooke's father was toasting with in picture number 47. She was not in a single frame. That night she sat on her bed and cried the way people cry when something inside them actually breaks. Then she stopped crying because the sound of her own sobbing suddenly sounded pathetic, and she was done being pathetic. 9 days later, the phone rang again. "Mom," Brooke's voice was no longer bright. It was small and trembling. "The mortgage is 2 weeks late. The bank called. They said something about foreclosure proceedings if we don't catch up by Friday. You forgot the transfer." Eleanor poured herself a cup of tea she had no intention of drinking. "Brooke, honey," she said with a calm that surprised even her, "I've decided something. From now on, I only help the special people." Silence thick enough to chew. I don't understand," Brooke whispered. "You will," Eleanor said, and hung up. She did not sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table instead and did something she had never done before. She added it all up. Mortgage payments for 38 months, $70,300. Furniture, appliances, and decor, $18,500. Car insurance and repairs for Marcus's truck, $9,200. Brooke's little emergencies, hair, nails, boutique gym membership, $11,400. Wedding costs she had quietly covered, $21,000. Random Venmo requests marked "Love you, Mom," $7,800. Total, $138,200. Almost everything Richard had left her. Everything she had planned to live on for the rest of her life. At 8:03 a.m., she was dressed, purse in hand, walking into the bank she had used for 41 years. The branch manager, David Park, knew her by sight. He had processed every one of those transfers. "Morning, Miss Thompson," the usual third of the month wire to Marcus. "Not today, David. Today I'm closing every joint account, canceling every automatic payment, and moving what's left into a new account that only has my name on it." David's eyes whitened, but he was too professional to ask questions. Within 90 minutes, it was done. Eleanor walked out lighter, as if someone had removed a tumor she had mistaken for a child. The retaliation began immediately. First came the texts. "Mom, call me. Urgent. Mom, please pick up. Mom, this isn't funny." Then the voicemails increasingly frantic. Then the surprise visit. She came home from grocery shopping to find Marcus's truck and Brooke's white SUV parked across her driveway like barricades. Through the window, she could see movement inside her house. Her house! They had a key. Of course they did. She had given it to them in case of emergencies. Eleanor stood on her own porch, feeling something ancient and furious rise in her chest. She took a breath, squared her shoulders, and opened the door. Marcus was pacing in the living room. Brooke was crying prettily on the couch Eleanor had paid to repurpose last Christmas. A third person, a man in an expensive suit, stood at her dining table rifling through a stack of papers that were absolutely none of his business. "What is this?" Eleanor asked. Her voice carried the same authority she once used on teenage boys who tried to sneak out of the hospital without paying. Three heads snapped up. "Mom!" Eleanor looked relieved, then guilty, then angry, all in the space of a second. "Where have you been? We've been calling for days." Brooke launched herself off the couch, mascara already artfully smudged. "Eleanor, thank God. We were so worried. This is Dr. Harlan. He's a lawyer. We think you might be confused." "Confused?" Eleanor repeated. The word tasted like rust. Marcus stepped forward, hands open in that placating gesture men use when they're about to explain something a woman couldn't possibly understand. "You've been acting strange, Mom. Cutting us off without warning, ignoring calls. Dr. Harlan says sudden personality changes at your age can be a sign of early dementia. We just want to help." Dr. Harlan cleared his throat and offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Thompson, your son and daughter-in-law are concerned about your capacity to manage large financial decisions. We've prepared a temporary power of attorney." Eleanor walked past him to the dining table and began gathering her documents. Her birth certificate, Richard's death certificate, the deed to the house, her new account statements, into a neat stack. "Get out of my house," she said quietly. Brooke's tears dried instantly. "You can't do this. We have bills. We made plans based on your help. The mortgage, the cars, my business." "Your business," Eleanor turned, "that I gave you $40,000 to start and that has never turned a profit?" Marcus flushed dark red. "That's not fair." "None of this has been fair," Eleanor said. "Not for a very long time." Dr. Harlan tried again, voice smooth as oil. "If you refuse reasonable assistance, we may have to petition the court for guardianship." Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. "Young man, I drew blood from angry sailors for 38 years. I have survived grief you can't imagine, raised a child alone, and kept a household running on hope and overtime. Do you truly believe a judge will take my rights away because I finally said no to two able-bodied adults who threw a $40,000 wedding and didn't invite their primary investor?" She pointed to the door. "Out, all of you, and leave my key on the table." They left, but not quietly. There were threats, tears, accusations of cruelty. Marcus's parting shot was the worst. "When you're old and sick and alone, don't come crying to us." Eleanor closed the door, turned every lock, and for the first time in decades, she laughed out loud. The next morning, she hired Margaret O'Donnell, the most feared elder law attorney in 3 counties. Margaret listened to the entire story without once interrupting, then leaned back in her leather chair and smiled like a cat who'd spotted a limping mouse. Financial exploitation of the elderly is a felony in this state, Eleanor, and attempting to have someone declared incompetent in order to seize assets, that's a whole buffet of charges. We're going to have fun. They started with the practical: new locks, a security system with cameras, a revocable living trust that put the house and all remaining assets out of reach. Then they moved to the fun parts. Margaret filed a civil suit for repayment of $138,200 plus interest. She subpoenaed every text, every Venmo request, every wedding vendor invoice Eleanor had paid. She found the photographer who confirmed Eleanor's name had been specifically removed from the